Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first Ulio Jump week, and thank you for joining me for the Ulio Jump for SketchUp webinar today. My name is Nicole. I'm one of the client success specialists here at Ulio, and I'll be hosting today's session. The main objective of today's webinar is to introduce you to rendering for virtual reality using the Ulio extension for SketchUp. We'll focus on establishing a practical SketchUp to VR workflow and explore how integrating VR and augmented reality into your presentations can truly enhance your client experience. This training will cover a lot of information, so if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to enter them in the question box and I will be answering those questions during the Q&A period at the end of our session. Also, my contact details are on the screen now, so if you'd like to follow up on today's webinar with any questions or additional support, please feel free to reach out to me. Lastly, if you do have to leave today's session early, I am recording the full webinar and we'll send that to all registrants so you'll be able to watch it later and share it with your team as well. All right, so here's our agenda for today's session. We'll start off by going over how you can install the Ulio extension in SketchUp. Then I'll cover how to prepare your model in SketchUp and render with Ulio Jump. Once we render our project, I'll show you how you can view and edit your VR project within Ulio. And then we'll finish off with that Q&A period, like I said. So for those of you that are new to Ulio, Ulio Jump is a cloud rendering engine that can render your projects in minutes and can auto-apply navigation and lighting enhancements to turn your model into a VR-ready experience. To begin rendering with Ulio Jump, you need to start off by installing the Ulio plugin for SketchUp. So this can be downloaded directly from the CAD plugins page on our website, which I'll show you now. So here's this page on our website. You can access it by going to resources and then CAD plugins, and you can install that SketchUp or download that SketchUp right here. That SketchUp plugin right here, sorry. So the Ulio extension is free to download. However, in order to actually use it, you will have to have an active Ulio license. So with the Ulio extension, you can render 360 panoramas, which is the file you need for VR, as well as 2D perspective renders, which you are likely more familiar with. So here's an example. So here's a 2D perspective render that you probably have seen before. And then here's that 360 panorama, which will be used for your VR experience. And today I'll show you how you can render both of these with Ulio. All right, let's go ahead and we'll open SketchUp and we'll start preparing our model for rendering. So here's the model I'm working with today. This is just a small condo space. So before you render, you're going to want to think about how you might need to prepare your space. So in most cases, we recommend creating a fully enclosed building shell. So that includes 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. This is because when rendering for VR, your clients are not only going to be seeing what's right in front of them. In VR, your clients will be able to fully explore your space. So, if you're showing off an indoor environment, such as a home or an office, having a full building shell will give them a more realistic and immersive experience. And as you'll see later, Ulio's lighting models also work best in this type of enclosed environment, which is another reason why we recommend it. So as you can see, this is my small condo space here, and it does have 4 walls, a ceiling, and a floor. So on the topic of preparing your model, let's talk a little bit more briefly about lighting. So Ulio Jump was designed to simplify the rendering process as much as possible and take all the complexities like lighting off of your hands. This means that when you're building your model to render with Ulio Jump, you don't necessarily have to worry too much about lighting. When you render with Ulio Jump, you'll have 2 lighting models available to light your space. You can still add lamps and ceiling lights to your space using these models. As you can see, I have 2 lights here. But when you render your project with Ulio, those lights will actually appear off. So your light source will instead be generated from Ulio's smart ambient lighting. I'll get into this a little bit more later when we actually open up the plugin to render. But while we're on the topic of preparing your model, that is one thing to keep in mind. Okay, the next thing you're going to want to think about is creating your scenes. So, when creating a project for VR, you can think of your scenes as different camera views that are set up around your space. Adding more than one scene will help your client explore the full scope of your space by letting them move to different areas once that project is turned into a VR experience. So, as you can see, I've already set up a couple of scenes here. So, I have scene one and scene two. This is a relatively small space. It's actually really small. So, I really only need 2 to 3 scenes. And I'll go ahead and add one more and I'll show you how to do that. So, I'm just going to click on this. I'm going to open the scenes menu here and click on the plus tab. Might make me wait a minute. Okay, there we go. So here's my additional scene it added here, and then you can set your scene using the orbit, pan, and zoom tools. So I'm going to do that now. Just going to zoom out a little bit, move down and over, and I'm going to kind of move into like the back corner of the space. So this will just take a little bit of fidgeting here. And that looks about right. So generally, I like to keep my camera level at a standing height, as I'm doing here. This is probably around maybe 5'6". But you can always get creative and experiment with different camera heights. For instance, if you have a couch or a chair in the space, you can do a seated view, which is something we've seen before. You can also lift your camera up and do more of like a bird's eye view. It's really up to you. I generally like to just kind of keep my camera heights at a standing position. All right, so here's where I'm going to place my camera for my third scene. So here's an important tip. So when you're placing your camera views for VR, you're going to place your camera where you want it, just like I've done here, and then you're going to move it closer. So you're just going to zoom in a little bit. So let's just zoom into about here. It might look a little bit funny, especially if you place it maybe like in front of a plant or something. Um, but we recommend you do this because after you render for VR and go to view that scene, it will always appear more zoomed out than you expect. So, in order to capture the view you truly want, you're going to want to place your camera in your ideal spot and then just zoom in closer. So, that looks about right there. And these are going to be my 3 scenes. What I'm going to do though is just reorganize my scenes here on the side so that my third scene is moved down. So I'm just going to press this arrow and move that down. And now they're all in order of how I'd like them to be. Again, when creating your scenes, like I said, you really just want to think about the journey or path that you want your viewer to take as they explore your space. All right, now for 2D perspective renders. So you can set up your scenes in the same file here if you'd like. When you go to render with the Ulio plugin, you'll be able to select or deselect which scenes you render depending on if you're rendering for VR or 2D. So you don't have to worry about mixing them up. So you'll set your camera for 2D the same way I just did, except you don't have to zoom in. You'll just place your camera where you want it, and then the view you see will accurately be represented in your final 2D render. By default, when you create new scenes, like you saw, they will be named scene one, scene two, scene three, and so on. If you would like to customize the name, you can just right click on the scene and then rename it. So, say I wanted my third scene here to actually be a 2D render that I want to render later, I can just label it 2D. And then when I go to render with the plugin, I kind of can identify which scenes I want for VR and then which scenes maybe I want to render as a 2D. All right. I am going to be rendering this for VR though, so I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, so now that I have my scenes, the next thing I want to show you are some enhancements that we can make to our project before rendering. So the first is Ulio's enhanced material tags for SketchUp. So if you're looking to take the photorealism in your projects to the next level, you can apply material tags to specific objects in your SketchUp project to add a texturized effect to the object, which will be reflected when rendered with Ulio. Enhanced material tags for SketchUp can be used on a list of materials including leather, ceramic, glass, and wood. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about this later on, we do have a knowledge base article on our website, which I will pull up now. So here's that knowledge base article. You can access our knowledge base by going to the resources tab and then knowledge base. So here's what that looks like. You can view our whole list of enhancement tags here, as well as see some before and after photos to give you an idea of kind of what those enhancement tags can do. All right, now I'm just going to return to my project and I want to go to scene 1. Okay, so to add an enhanced material tag, you're just going to click on any material. So I'm going to click first. I'm going to use my uh, hood fan here as an example. So I'm just going to click on this and I'm going to go to the materials tray here. And and then I'm just going to click on the paint dropper tool here to identify which material I have on this hood fan right now. So I'm going to select that. So here's the material that I have right now. And then all I'm going to do is I want to make this a brushed metal, give it a brushed metal effect. So the tag for Ulio's, the enhancement tag for this is hashtag jump brushed metal. And I'm just going to add that hashtag in front of the material that I already have here. And that's it. So now when I go to render, this hood fan will kind of have a brushed metal effect on it. You can do this throughout your project on any materials that you want to boost the realism for. And if you decide later that you don't like that material, you can always change it just by updating the hashtag to one of the other hashtag that we have. Or if you just don't want any enhanced material on that item anymore, you can just get rid of it altogether. Okay, gonna add that back. Perfect. And the final thing I want to talk about before we render our project is AR tagging. So over the summer, Ulio launched fully automated augmented reality publishing direct from SketchUp. So this is really exciting, and this is an optional enhancement to your VR project that lets you incorporate AR hotspots into your VR experience. So, for your clients, this means that they can see project elements like furniture, for instance, in full 360. They can also take it one step further by using a VR headset or even just a phone or a tablet to see how that element looks and fits in the context of their physical space. So, to export augmented reality assets and have them be created as an AR hotspot in your VR project, you'll just have to first tag the items in your model using Ulio's AR tagging convention. So, I'm going to show you how to do this now. So, the first thing you're going to do is navigate to let's close the materials, navigate to the tags tray and open that up. And then you're going to select the plus icon here to define a new AR tag. And you can either you can have one item per tag or group multiple items together under one tag. So that's nice as well. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. So we'll select the plus icon and then we're going to type in the name box to rename your tag to follow our tagging convention. So our tagging convention is hashtag Ulio AR =, and then the object name. So your object name can be labeled any way you'd like. We do recommend reflecting the object or objects you plan on including in the tag just to make it easier to identify which is which. So I again am going to use my hood fan as an example. So I will just name this hood fan. And that's it. That will save automatically down here. So once you've created the tag, you'll need to assign it to an object or objects. So you're going to start off by selecting the item. I already have this hood fan selected. And then I'm going to go to entity info and then tag. And I'm going to select the AR tag that I'd like to add the item to. So I will add this to hood fan, and that's it. Now, if I wanted to, let's say, add the, well, let's do this. So, for example, later you'll see that we also have an AR object for this kitchen table here. So, the table, as well as all four chairs, were tagged under the same kitchen table tag. So, they've grouped together and they're one item later on, and I'll show you that. Okay. Oops, it looks like a rec. Okay. If you did want to remove the item from the AR tag later, you can just select it again and then select untagged. All right, now we are ready to render with Ulio. So you will begin by clicking on the Ulio extension. So it should show up here if you have downloaded it. Now, the first time you render with Ulio Jump, you'll be prompted to, oops, I don't know what's going on here. Let's close that. Try and reopen it. Now, the first time you render with Ulio Jump, you'll be prompted to enter the email address associated with your account just to verify your Ulio license. Once you've gone through those steps, you'll go back to the Ulio extension here and then proceed with rendering. So, I'm sorry, I'm not sure why it is. There we go. So here's all the settings that you can edit and apply. So first we have our company. Most of the time you will only have access to one company and it will be listed as the default one. Next you have a few options for rendering. So you can render with Ulio Jump. So choosing Ulio Jump will allow you to create a VR project, and that project will process and upload directly to your Ulio account. Next, we have Ulio Jump Perspective. So you will choose this when you want to render those regular 2D perspective renders. If you render with Ulio Jump Perspective, it will just be sent right to your email. And you can download the JPEG from your email. And then we have V-Ray. So you have this option to render with V-Ray, and this is a rendering engine that creates lifelike imagery, but it is not a Ulio product. So if you render with V-Ray through our extension, your files will just be sent to your Ulio account. We're not going to use that one today. We're just going to use Ulio Jump. Now here's our lighting models. So here you can select the lighting model that you'd like to render with. So I was talking about this earlier. You'll have two different lighting models to render with. The first is exterior/bright spaces. So this model typically works best in an environment with a lot of windows or even a skylight because it simulates real world lighting that you would get from the sun. That being said, today actually I'll be using this lighting model even though I'm in a space with not that many windows. I actually just rendered both lighting models, and just with how my model's set up, the exterior lighting model actually looked a little bit better in my opinion. So I'm going to be rendering with the exterior one today. We also have interior though. So this lighting model is typically going to work better in spaces with few to no windows. So it combines sunlight with artificial ambient light to evenly light your space. I'm just going to go back to exterior here. Perfect. Okay, next we have the Ulio folder that you want to choose from. So you'll essentially, it just allows you to select which folder in your Ulio account that you'd like to the VR project to be uploaded to. And then here we have our scenes. So here you can select the scenes you'd like to render. So if you remember, I had said that if you set up your scenes for both VR and 2D perspective, you can select or deselect those here depending on if you're rendering for VR or if you just want to download those 2D perspective renders. So all of these are my VR scenes, so I'm just going to keep all of those. And now we have our project enhancement. So here we have navigation hotspots. So by selecting navigation hotspots, Yulia will auto-generate navigational hotspots to your project so you can move scene to scene when viewing in Yulia. If you'd prefer it to do it manually, you can always add in these navigation hotspots later. I'm going to add them. Okay, next we have floor plan. So by selecting add floor plan, Yulia will automatically build a floor plan from your model. All right, and then lastly, we have add AR models. So you'll select this if there are any items in your design that you have tagged as AR. And when you select this, any AR object you've tagged will be created and inserted into your VR project as an interactive AR hotspot. And of course, we added AR models, so we're going to select that as well. And then once you've selected all your preferences, you'll just click on Create Project. So the time to process and render will depend on the size and complexity of your project. Um, to give you an idea, a smaller project like this one here should only take about 5 to 10 minutes. Regardless, when your VR project is ready in Ulio, you'll receive an email notification to let you know. Um, I'm actually not going to render this today just to save us time. I've already pre-rendered it. Um, if you render with Ulio Jump Perspective, like I said, your 2D renders will just be emailed to you. Okay. So like I said, I've pre-rendered this project. So I'm going to open that up now. All right. So here's my rendered project. Once it's done, it will show up in your account or in your folder in your account. And it'll look something like this. So I'm going to open that up. And we're going to start off just by viewing our project in browser mode. So browser mode just means that you're viewing the project from an internet browser on your computer, phone, or tablet. There are a couple of different ways you can open your project to view it in browser mode, but from this page that I'm on here, I'm just going to select the View in 360 icon, and this will open it in a new tab. Okay, so while viewing in browser mode on a computer, you can click and drag your mouse to look around the scene. If you're using a touch screen device, you can just use your finger to hold and drag along the screen to view the project. Okay, so the first thing I want to note is the lighting. So as you can see, the exterior lighting model lit up the space really nicely. Then you can even see the shadows that it creates to kind of really give it a realistic look. As we look around as well, you'll notice our navigation hotspots and AR models in the scene. And these are those hotspots that we generated with Jump. So um, here's the hood fan AR model that I tagged. And then here is my different scenes. So the scene that I added is actually over here. And I can click on that now and show you. That's what that looks like. Sometimes when you render your navigation and air hotspots with Ulio Jump, their location or size can be slightly off. So if you never ever notice this, you can always go to your hotspot editor and adjust those hotspots later. And you would just go to your hotspot editor by selecting this button here. Actually, I'm going to go in and show you this. So let's open the hotspot editor. So in this editor here is where I can edit my hotspots. If I added any other enhancements, so audio, images, and video, they would all be included here, and I would be able to drag and drop them into my scenes. And then, as I was saying, if you ever wanted to change the size of your hotspots, you can click on them and adjust the size here. All right. And then, if you wanted to add audio and images and video, you would do that just within this project edit page here. Okay, let's go back to our project. So, like I said, if your project has navigation hotspots, you can click on them to navigate to a new scene and then move throughout the space. Let's go to scene 2. So as you can see, I'm just in a new scene and it just gives me a different perspective of the space, and maybe I can see different things more clearly from this angle than I would on the other side of the space, um, which is great. So if you also had Ulio Jump create a floor plan like we did, you can activate that by clicking on this floor plan button on the bottom left side of your screen, and it will open up like this. All right, so that's the browser experience. Viewing in a VR headset is similar in that it's super simple to navigate the experience. It does, however, provide a much more immersive viewing experience. If you're interested in viewing in VR or in a VR headset, we recommend a MetaQuest headset just because it offers the best viewing experience and at a pretty affordable cost. Viewing in VR does require some initial setup, which due to time today, I'm not going to get into all of that. If you're interested in learning about how to connect a VR headset to your account, we do have a lot of different resources on that you can check out. So we have a knowledge base article here that goes over connecting a headset to your account. And we also have a YouTube channel with plenty of video tutorials, as well as a VR headset webinar. And you can check out our YouTube just by typing in Ulio VR on YouTube. Aside from that, you can always reach out to me for support in setting up your headset and viewing in VR if you find it to be a little bit complicated. All right, the last thing I want to go over in our scene here is AR. So you can view AR hotspots on your computer, and you can also view it on a phone, a tablet, or in a VR headset. To view a AR hotspot, you'll just click on the hotspot. So let's open up this range hood here. And you will be able to view this object in full 360. So this is the browser mode experience for AR. And it's pretty much restricted to this view here where you can kind of see it in full 360, which is cool. But to kind of get a more interactive experience and allow yourself to see the model in your physical space, you can select this AR button and you can scan this QR code with a smartphone or tablet. So, on most smartphones or tablets, you can simply open up the camera app and point it at the QR code to scan. A link should appear at this point, and you'll click on that to open the model in Ulio. So, I'm going to actually show you what this will look like. So here's one of my colleagues, Dana, viewing a AR model on her tablet. So she's just scanning the space and then the AR model will pop up and she can position it lift it, tilt it, and place it exactly where she wants in her own physical surroundings. Now, if you're in a VR headset, here's what that will look like. So, when you open the AR model from your headset, it will be similar to the phone or tablet experience in that you can view the object in your own physical space. It's just elevated even more because it's more immersive from directly within that headset. It's a really cool experience. All right. And there's that. And that wraps up our Ulio Jump for SketchUp webinar. So I know that was a lot of information to take in a relatively short amount of time, but I hope that you were able to learn more about Ulio Jump and how seamlessly it can fit into your workflow. Thank you all for joining me today. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the chat box and I will stick around for the next couple of minutes to answer those. As a reminder, my contact details are on the screen. So if you want to follow up today with any questions that might pop up later, or if you want additional support with anything we covered today, please just send me an email at any time and I'll be happy to support you. All right, now let me just see if we have any questions. Okay, one question I see is, can we see an example of the other lighting model that you mentioned? So, yes, I actually rendered both lighting models or rendered the same project with both lighting models so that you would be able to see the difference. So let me show you that now. So here's the exterior lighting model that we rendered with that you saw. And then here's the interior one. So it still looks really good. I personally just chose the exterior one because it was a little bit more warm and just a little bit brighter in this, just in this space. But since it's so quick and simple to render with Ulio Jump, it doesn't take a lot of time to just try out both. So honestly, if you do have the time, I would just recommend trying out both. If one doesn't seem to be doing it for you, that's what I did, and I ended up liking the exterior one better. So that's what that looks like. All right, another question I have here is, are we able to see the enhanced materials in the 2D perspective render? So, yes, when you apply an enhanced material, you can see that in the 2D perspective render as well. All right, I don't see any more questions, so I'll wrap it up there. And thank you again for joining me.